Congratulations, you've just found the #1 over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert and the founder of the Silver Edge, and I am on a mission to help men and women just like you build lean, strong, healthy, amazing, capable bodies they love for the rest of their lives. All right, folks, before we jump into today's episode, if you're over 50 and you're feeling stuck or frustrated and you want a clear plan, then I invite you to book a free Silver Edge Clarity Call with me. I will throw a link to that into the show notes. All right, guys, here we go. Today, we're going to talk about something that might explain a whole lot of what you've been feeling lately. You know, that frustrating sense that your body is just kind of stuck? Like, no matter what you do, maybe you work out, you eat, quote unquote, pretty good, you try to stay active, but the scale won't move, your belly won't budge, your joints feel tighter, your posture feels worse, and you wake up feeling like your body got into a bar fight overnight. So if you've ever thought, why does my body feel so stiff and heavy and resistant after 50? Or maybe, why does everything take more effort than it used to? Then today's episode is going to be a total game changer, because we're not talking today about calories or cardio or trying harder. We're talking about a subject that most people have never been taught, and that subject is fascia. Now, once you understand what fascia is and how it affects your posture, your breathing, your pain levels, your stress response, and even your ability to lose fat, you're going to start looking at your body completely differently. Now, my guest today is Deanna Hansen. Deanna is a certified athletic therapist. She's the founder of Block Therapy, which is it's a bodywork practice that combines meditation, exercise, and therapy all in one. And guys, her story is crazy. Even though she was doing everything, quote unquote, right in her 20s, she was working out like crazy, she was dieting hard, she was still 50 pounds overweight, and she was dealing with chronic pain, constipation, depression, anxiety. And then one day, during a major anxiety attack, she had this breakthrough that completely changed her body and her life. And now, today, she teaches people how to decompress the body, restore space and movement, improve breathing mechanics, reduce pain, and feel lighter and more mobile again without beating themselves into the ground. So, if you're over 50 and you feel like your body is tight, stiff, achy, or maybe stubborn, then this is an episode that you don't want to miss. So let's go, folks. Whip up your protein smoothie and let's meet Deanna.
I'm going to jump back to when I was in my 20s. I'm 56 now. So at the time, I was training to be an athletic therapist, which is similar to a physiotherapist here in Canada, but focusing on elite athletes. And I was doing everything that I was trained to do, from the perspective of working out to, I'm putting in quotes, dieting, because I've learned what that actually means now and how different it is. And as hard as I was working, I was 50 pounds overweight. I was struggling with so many things: chronic pain, constipation, depression, all of it. And the harder that I worked, the more compressed and the more ballooned I became. So finally, at the age of 30, I made some major changes in my life. And one of the changes created me having a whole bunch of anxiety attacks. But it was this one anxiety attack in particular that was really the seed of everything to come. In the moment, I actually thought I was going to die because I was so locked in fear, I couldn't catch my breath. So for some reason, I intuitively dove my hand into my abdomen. And the first thing I encountered was pain, but the pain brought me out of my crazy thinking. It brought me back into my body, and I'm like, okay, I'm breathing, I'm alive, I'm good. And then I started intuitively exploring with my hands in the tissue. Now, as an athletic therapist, I focused on deep tissue work. That was how I pretty much handled all of my patients on a day-to-day basis. And I was very familiar with what scar tissue felt like in other people's bodies, even my own. But because I stored the majority of my size in my abdomen, I was ashamed of this area. I never touched it, let alone let anyone else for that matter. So now here I am with my hands deep inside this space. And besides feeling pain, I also felt like what was marbled with scar tissue, even though I hadn't had any injury or surgery in that area. And suddenly I had all of these aha moments, like, no wonder when I'm coming back from a 5-mile run and I'm dripping wet with sweat, my belly would still feel cold. So for the first evening, I spent maybe 30, 45 minutes working in the tissue. And what was most notable for me was how calm I felt. So I was excited the next day. I woke up, I was a little tender from the work. I worked on my patients all day. I came back home that night and I went back in and I started the exploration. And after the second night of doing the work, I stood up and I felt taller. And I went and I looked at myself in the mirror, and my belly was flatter than it had looked in years. And I mean, I was extreme. 400 sit-ups a day, Tae Bo, running, aerobics, like the weights, like all of it. So in 2 days, the change was phenomenal. So this became my new habit. I would come home from working on my patients, and now I'm exploring in my body. And within 2 weeks, my chronic low back pain was going away. All these other changes were happening. So then I started flipping my patients on their backs, and I started working in their bodies in a similar fashion. And it wasn't long before word was getting out, and I started attracting other therapists that wanted to learn this technique. And somewhere along the way, I recognized I'm actually working in this tissue called fascia. And what makes fascia so fascinating, I really see it as the cell membrane of every cell connecting to every other cell. It's the communication system between every cell. And it's primarily composed of two proteins, collagen and elastin. And when these proteins are in balance, it gives us the structure that we have combined with the mobility, the flexibility that we have so that we can do what we want to every day. And if that's the case, that they're balanced, what that creates is optimal space in and around each cell. Space for nutrients to move into the cell and absorb, as well as the removal of toxins and debris away from the cell. And if that's the case, there's ease of flow. If there's ease of flow, there's a body that doesn't struggle with pain, aging, and dis-ease. Now, that's the perfect world, and none of us are perfectly aligned in that way, because one of the things is gravity is this constant force pulling us down. And we're patterned in our fascia from how we've lived our life. We're dominant on one side. Are you sitting in front of a computer all day? Are you a manual laborer? Do you play sports? Do you play instruments? How we hold our body all day accumulates to create what is happening in this very moment. So what happens with this balance of collagen and elastin is the collagen, that structural piece, starts migrating to areas of need to create almost like scaffolding. They're called false walls and false floors. We have foundations in our body to support proper postural alignment, but we haven't really been educated on this. So unless we are, we start tipping off balance under these influences, and then that collagen creates density in the body, which blocks blood and oxygen flow, just like scar tissue would if you've had an injury or a surgery. So this is what really creates that patterning and creates aging as we understand it today. And that's basically fascia compression. My work is all about fascia decompression, putting the space back into the body that time has taken away so that we can reestablish proper cell alignment and create that ease of flow back into the body.
Proper cell alignment and the ease of flow back into the body. So as I was preparing for this segment here, this interview, that's what really struck me. I had not heard that from anybody talking about fascia before. That I had encountered fascia. It's this sheath, it's this lining of our organs and our tissues and our bones and our nerves and all these different things. And it's this vast, complex web or network within our body. But you talk about it in this completely different way. And this idea that we have this balance, what did you say, between collagen and elastin? Is that right? And
yes, there's other components to fascia, but those are the two major proteins.
Two main ones, two major proteins there. All right. So you mentioned that if I can maintain this cellular space and I can maintain these open pathways, and I think you even referenced communication, is it fair to say that a cell communicates with another cell through the fascia, or is the fascia just helping to facilitate that? What's its role there in that cell to cellular intercommunication?
No, it's so beautiful, and I'm so grateful that the world is waking up to this liquid crystalline structure that makes up our body. You know, we are a body with parts, but we're also this connection from head to toe, and we're not the parts. We're this whole being that communicates. So the fascia it's electromagnetic, excuse me. I have a cold, so my brain isn't working real great today. And yes, it's communicating with all the pathways. Every single system in your body is innervated by fascia. Every single cell in your body is innervated by fascia. So bone included, teeth included. Like, it's just so phenomenal. And, you know, the nervous system is regulated through the fascia, the pain receptors in the fascia, the pressure fibers in the fascia. These are all giving information to the body to what's going on. And that's the key. It's so vast, and we're really just tapping into this magnificent thing that we are through this lens. And so when we really get a deep understanding for what our system is and how to support it properly, we can truly change the dynamic of even how we see aging as what it is today. So we all know, I mean, again, I'm 56, and as we get older, we all expect certain things to happen. We might look at our parents and the genetics and all of that, but really it comes down to maintaining this space. And what's fascinating is every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So gravity is this constant force pulling us down. The full exhalation, this plate of muscle that really drives the movement of fluids in the body, when we exhale, it's lifting up. So it's really the counterforce to gravity. So one of the three main pillars of the work that I teach is teaching proper diaphragmatic breathing so that we can make sure that we're getting proper oxygen to each and every cell in the body, as well as moving the toxins most effectively out of the body. They've shared that 84% of weight loss comes through proper exhalation, and that's because of the detoxifying effects. And so that, as soon as I started learning this, that took me back to my 20s when I'm working out so hard, I'm literally starving myself at times, and I'm like, why are the rules of weight loss not working for me? And it was because I was so locked in my core. I was breathing primarily through the muscles of my upper chest, and I basically turned off my engine. So I was cold and I was dense and hard in this area. So if I can jump in and talk a little bit more about the diaphragm at this point, I think it would be really helpful and interesting
Yeah.
for people to understand.
Hit us. Yeah. I'm loving where this is going. Go. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the diaphragm is a plate of muscle that sits at the base of the rib cage. It is the ceiling to the abdominal organs. It is the floor to the heart and the lungs. When it's working properly, when we inhale, it moves down in the body. When we exhale, it lifts. So when we're breathing consciously this way, we are giving all of these organs a continual massage. The challenge is pain, fear, and stress cause you to reactively hold the breath. So, I mean, this world is stressful 24/7
Yeah.
for the majority of everybody. So, as a result, the secondary muscles of respiration are the muscles of the upper chest. But unfortunately, these become the dominant muscles for the majority of people in how they breathe. And it's at the base of the lungs where the majority of the oxygen receptor sites reside. So, if we're breathing these shallow breaths, we're not bringing the air deep enough into the lungs to reach this bed of abundance. I've read we feed the body up to 600% more, 6 times more oxygen when breathing diaphragmatically.
Wow.
So that's
Yeah.
huge.
That
Like
is huge.
that,
Yeah. That's a big jump.
and yeah,
Yeah.
and to know that the first nutrient that every cell needs to thrive is oxygen. If we understand that, then learning how to breathe diaphragmatically really becomes one of the most important things we can do. And even brain function, when we're breathing diaphragmatically, we're in a relaxed brain state. We've turned on our parasympathetic nervous system. Most people are breathing with a stressed breath, and their brain is in stress mode. So even if you're in a moment of total peace and relaxation, your brain is still feeling incoming stress. Conversely, if you're breathing diaphragmatically and you're in a stressful moment, your internal world doesn't have to undergo whatever that noise is outside because you've taken control of what's going on inside your body.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. We have talked a lot about, certainly about stress and chronic stress and living in a time when there's never been, we've never been more stressed, and the importance of something as simple as breathing, that, deep inhalation into your belly, that hold for a second, and that long, slow exhale, moving from that sympathetic to that parasympathetic state. And certainly I think that all the way back to very, very ancient traditions realized there was magic in that movement, that there was something very healing in that. And that has come, I think, full circle today. We need that now more than ever. But I agree with you. I think that most,
If I can jump in here,
please
because
do.
I think
Yeah.
you've just sort of volleyed the ball to this conversation about how that collagen grips to bone.
There you go. Yeah.
So as we start tipping off balance, the collagen migrates, creating adhesions in the body. They grip to everything in their path, as well as bone, with a force of up to 2,000 pounds per square inch. So if you can just sort of think of that for a moment, this internal pressure within. So if we're sitting and we've been slouched over for decades, and you tell somebody to sit up straight, they can probably pull their body up straight, but the second they're not conscious of that, they get whipped
Sure.
right back down into that alignment, and it's magnetic. Now, this includes the rib cage. So if we are doing breathing exercises, whatever your alignment is starting breathing exercises, you will have access to the amount of that muscle available now, and you can keep strong what you have available. However, what we teach with fascia decompression is to release those adhesions on the rib cage to integrate more of the diaphragm into your conscious breath. And that's the key and what makes this work so different, because that, again, that 2,000 pound per square inch seal, unless you understand how to release it in the body, it's locking you in. And then we get patterned from trauma, from pain, from stress, all of those things. And depending, like, were you traumatized when you were 2 years old, 12 years old, when you were an adult? And especially if those traumas get patterned in when you're in your developmental years, then you grow with that limited ability to oxygenate cells as you're developing, which creates a whole different scenario for people than if they are traumatized later in life when they're fully developed.
Very interesting. Okay. Now, I've heard it said that people, like, for example, I will tell people I carry my stress in my traps. Or I've heard people say I have emotional trauma and it's released through my hips. So this idea that we have this trauma, whether it's from childhood trauma or more recent trauma, but emotional trauma, not physical trauma, is that a thing? Do I really carry stress in a specific location of my body? Does somebody really have emotional trauma in a certain part of their body? And if so, does fascia play a role in that storing? Is there something physiologically that's happening from these acute stressors?
Yes. So again, imagine the perfect body where every cell is actually positioned where it's supposed to be. And in yoga, they call it effortless effort, when we can basically stand and our cells are all magnetized in right alignment. If that's the case, there's really no stress anywhere. But again, the diaphragm is the driver of this. So let's say I'm 10 years old and I witness something traumatizing. What we naturally do is we hold the breath. I mean, even just, walk into a room and you feel uncomfortable or hurt yourself, we hold the breath.
Mm-hmm.
A deer that survives an attack will shake and it will release that negative energy that comes in the moment. But we as humans, we stay locked. We tend to go into fight or flight. So we freeze into that alignment and then we go from there. So right off the hop, if my alignment is correct, and I don't know if everybody can see what I'm doing here or if some are just going to be hearing this, but correct alignment, my traps are relaxed because I'm in correct alignment. But as soon as I lock, now you can see where my traps go. So if I don't release this, that emotion, we're going to feel it up here because now these muscles, they're having to hold up my body because my body is in this negative alignment. I'm tipping forward and rotating. We always age in a forward rotational direction. So the muscles in the back of the body, if we don't have proper postural foundations, they're having to do a job that's not their job, which is hold us up from tipping. So that's where we start to store. And so, yes, I mean, whether it's physical or emotional, it's all the same on the inside because the response to pain, fear, and stress is to reactively hold the breath. So it all gets tied into the breath. And then this is where it gets really interesting because the feet, the hands, and the head, these are the areas that are furthest from your engine, feet particularly. So the patterning of what happens with those traumas get locked into your feet. That is where that magnetic seal holds us with the strongest force. So let's say I even have like a shoulder pain or frozen shoulder, and you're going for shoulder treatments, but part of the reason for your shoulder pain is going to be this negative alignment that's going to be locked in and held by your feet. So you can go for treatments, but you start walking
Right.
and you get pulled back into this negative alignment at your feet. So when we're talking fascia and how to help the body, we have to look at the whole structure and we have to see where are the cause sites to the issue sites. Scoliosis, really easy to understand this. If you're looking at the spine, you see the curve or whatever it is, but the limbs are really what's driving that because as they start to pull out of alignment, they start manipulating the core of the body. So that's the thing, like we really have to understand if you're feeling pain or issue somewhere, working on that, it might be helpful temporarily
Right.
to manage,
Right.
but if you want to get through it, you have to go to the source. And the feet and the hands and the head and your diaphragm, like it's all interwoven and interconnected.
Yeah, isn't that something? It seems to me the more we try to be reductionist in science and we there's a time and a place for that. I'm not throwing that under the bus, but it seems to me the more it causes us to pull back and say, okay, I'm I'm glad we went down that rabbit hole. We understand this very reductionist principle, but without viewing that in this much greater holistic sense, I think that it loses a lot of its meaning, which is why I think most of the time when we see in popular literature, new study says, my BS meter goes off. I'm like, that's probably meaningless because of that. Now, you had mentioned there were these 3 pillars when it comes to this fascial health, and we mentioned breathing being one of them. I think we can clearly see why. What are the other 2 pillars?
So again, it's the goal is optimal space in and around every cell. So the 3 pillars are creating space, inflating space, and maintaining space. So with the work that I teach, may I show the tools?
Absolutely, yeah. And so you might want to describe for the folks that more people will listen to this than watch this. So yeah, as you're going along.
Yeah.
Yep.
So block therapy is my website is blocktherapy.com, but we've got tools made of wood. The reason that these tools, there's the Block Buddy, the Block Baby, 2 different sizes, and we even have a block paddle, which is fascinating for the face and for other parts of the body. But all these tools, they're made of wood. And the reason that they're made of wood and specifically shaped is because what we teach you to do is lie on the tool. So you're using, instead of my hands as a therapist going into your tissue and working it, we teach you how to do this as a self-care practice. So you lie on the tool, and pressure over time creates heat. And no matter what, we always start in the belly. Whether we're working on the ankle, the head, the arm, we start in the belly so that we teach people where your breath should come from. Because again, if you're breathing through the muscles of the upper chest, sometimes it can take a little bit of time to learn how to breathe through your belly, especially if, like me, as a kid, I was a dancer, I was told, hold your belly in. So you hold your belly in because you want it to look a certain way. Now I'm forced to breathe through the muscles of the upper chest, but now I've created this weak diaphragm foundation of my rib cage, so it starts crashing down into the core, and then my belly expands. So it takes you in that opposite direction. So as we're lying on the belly and we're teaching you to breathe, we stay in a minimum of 3 minutes in each position because we need time to create that heat. That starts to get to those adhesions and it starts to release it. So combining the pressure from the block, whatever position we're in, with teaching proper diaphragmatic breathing, we're creating space with the tool. We are inflating the space by directing the breath into these newly open spaces. So these cells that have been blocked from flow, now you're getting them to respond and they take that oxygen and they start plumping up. So now we're inflating that space that was compressed prior. And then the 3rd pillar is maintaining that space, teaching people proper postural foundations. If you pretty much look at anybody standing, nobody's standing as they should be. Even anatomical position of the hands, if you look at a skeleton, palms are facing forward. Everybody's walking around with their palms facing the back, and that creates internal rotation of the arms, which causes the rib cage to come down, and so on and so on. So that's part of the education is, how are we supposed to be seated? We don't want to be shifting over to one side of the body because then that creates a patterning. And those are the things that are going to create issues like scoliosis, chronic hip and back pain. I mean, you name it, it's pretty much everything. So those are the pillars, and we make it really, really simple for people to simply dive in, start the journey, and start to feel the changes immediately, because we always begin first in the rib cage and the core, so we can start to unlock your diaphragm. And then the more we unlock it, the deeper the breath goes. So you're pulling, again, more oxygen in, your body starts to respond right away. We're detoxing more effectively. So you feel lighter, you feel cleaner. And again, we're tapping into that parasympathetic nervous system. So you feel calm immediately from doing this work, not to mention all of the other crazy benefits that you get from it.
Yeah, so crazy benefits. Let's spend a minute and talk about that, because it sounds like what's happening here. You're talking about, okay, I'm going to create space, I'm going to inflate, I'm going to maintain this space. So we've got this wooden block, basically. We're going to start by laying on it, for folks that are not watching, just putting it on your abdomen. You're going to lay face down on there. You're going to have a breathing practice that goes with that. Now, help me understand the mechanism of action here. What's physiologically happening there? As I'm trying to imagine, I've not done this practice. I will, but I haven't yet. What is happening to my fascia? Am I loosening it? Is that fair to say? How specifically am I creating this space? And I think that what you mean, create space, you had mentioned that fascia helps us create that space between cells. Is that kind of space I'm creating?
So, what's actually happening? So, I always refer to we are melting the adhesions that get created over time from unconscious living, unconscious breathing, unconscious posture, and then gravity driving that whole scenario.
Yeah.
So, again, as those collagen fibers start to migrate, so imagine walking a 120-pound dog. And if it's well trained, it's not tugging on your body. But if it's not and it's pulling you, your one side is getting pulled, the opposite side is contracting so you don't land on your
Mm-hmm.
face. So when we start patterning negatively with our posture, those collagen fibers are migrating in a slow moving version of that so that we don't tip over. But as that happens and we start binding and becoming more compressed, we become colder because now we don't have energy or flow moving into certain spaces. So we're actually, I mean, that's what I felt when I was working on my belly,
Mm-hmm.
or when I would work out and I would feel that my belly is still cold, which is why I couldn't change the size and shape no matter how hard I was working. There was no blood flow getting to these spaces. So the combination of pressure over time, which creates heat, that's heating us from the inside. The combination of that with diaphragmatic breathing, which is like turning on your body's furnace, you're getting heated from the inside and the outside. So we start to melt those adhesions.
Melt those
And then again,
adhesions. Okay. So we're kind of, it's almost like
yes,
breaking up scar tissue. Is that a fair way of
yes.
looking at it? Okay.
Well, and adhesions are really just, again, a slow forming version of scar tissue.
Right.
So it's the same thing and it acts the same. It blocks flow.
Gotcha.
And that's the problem. We don't have flow.
Don't have flow. Okay. So for those of us that are interested in healthy aging, to be sure, you don't get to be in your 50s, 60s, or 70s without some sort of non-optimal patterning, right? I think most of us are aware that we sit most of the day, we're in our car in this horrible hunched over position. We're on our phone in this terrible hunched over position. We're on our laptop in this horrible hunched over position. We're so in that kind of that rounded, talk about bad patterning, right? Other than just having some awareness here, what are some simple steps in terms of things we can do in our environment or our lifestyle to kind of cue us to, I was very fortunate. I was raised by a mom who was militant with posture. Sit up straight, sit up straight. There was four of us kids. We were always told to sit up straight, sit up straight. And so I've always been conscious of that, but I think most of us are not. And even being conscious of that doesn't mean that I don't have, like I told you, I feel like I carry my stress right here and that's probably pulling me forward. Are there things that I can do lifestyle wise, like setting up my workspace environment or other things that I can do to kind of gently start pulling me back in and creating the space outside of doing some deliberate, breath work and block work?
So just as you're seated here, one of the things, where are your feet
Yeah, there's
on the floor?
right underneath my knees.
Right. Okay. Beautiful.
Is that
And that's
good?
where they
Okay,
should be,
good. All right, good.
90-degree or
90
even a little
degrees.
greater,
Yes. Yeah.
because so many people will pull their feet in and tuck them around the
Hmm.
chair. So when we're standing, we teach people how to stand properly, and literally your feet should be underneath your hip
Yeah.
joints. And that doesn't mean like the sides of your hips. Your hip joints are inside your pelvis.
Mm.
And if your feet are directly underneath, then we've got like a tree trunk.
Yeah.
And also, most people naturally hyperextend their knees. And as soon as you hyperextend the knees, now you're asking your ligaments to hold up your body weight instead of asking your muscles, which are designed to hold up our body weight, to support us. So as soon as we lock the knees, we're allowing that twisting of the pelvis. So whenever I'm doing assessments on people, the first thing I look at is the alignment of their feet. There's always one foot, usually the right one, that acts like the driver, the flat tire. If you've got a flat tire on that front right side, the rest of the car gets pulled. The steering wheel gets tugged over. So we have a flat tire, and then the opposite side of the body anchors. And then that creates twisting up the chain. So one of the things, become aware of how you're standing. Become aware of how you're sitting. As you're sitting here, I like sitting on wood because it gives me feedback.
Mm.
So are both of my sit bones touching the chair with equal pressure, or am I leaning more one side or the other? These are some of the things to be aware of. Putting a book or a block, if you have, at the back so that that prompts you to keep your rib cage lifted up and back. I've been teaching proper tongue alignment for 25 years. But mewing now has become like this thing where you suction the tongue up to the roof of the mouth. That helps to support proper alignment of the head and the neck. Also, what are you doing with your arms? Are you internally rotated? So a couple things to really help people bring this balance back into their body that you can start right away. I teach people how to first and foremost work between the toes. The patterning of the toes, again, they're literally the furthest from the engine. So your toes pattern how you walk, how you stand, and they've even connected longevity and toe strength now. So we want strong, active toes because they're supposed to help us be mobile and balanced. And if they're not part of that equation, the tendency for us to fall and also twist out of alignment is that much greater. So what I teach people to do between each toe, the webbing of each toe, you can use your finger, you can use a pencil, or you can even get a cord. I mean, we've got cords everywhere now, and you can wrap it through, and we want to decompress the area for 3 minutes between each and every toe as you focus on the exhale. If we exhale for a longer count than we inhale, we are increasing the carbon dioxide in the body. If you've had or read James Nestor's book, you know all about this. So focusing on that and breathing in and out through the nose is key, but decompressing between the toes to the point that you feel it too. We want to connect to that pain because pain equals adhesion. So that's one of the things I teach people is we want to see pain as our friend, not our enemy. It's really just the baby crying. It's your cell giving you information that it's struggling, that it needs some assistance, whether it's space, nutrition, hydration, rest. So when we work between each digit for 3 minutes, the change in how you feel, the energy you bring into your feet, it's phenomenal. And then I always teach people after you've worked all the toes, and they don't have to be all done at the same time because, I mean, time is time,
Yeah.
but you can just do this sitting watching a TV show.
Yeah.
After you do that, stand with your feet straight underneath your hip joints, grip the toes into the floor for 10 slow breaths. Think of pumping up a tire. We're walking on flat tires. We want our feet to have a spring in their step and to be alive and vibrant. That is going to help repattern everything up the chain. I also teach people how to release between the fingers, and this doesn't take as long because you can do both at once. So between the thumb and the index finger, just spread them nice and wide apart and move the webbing of each into each other.
Yeah.
Hold for 3 minutes. I'm showing you up here. You'd want to do it more like
Yeah.
belly button height so you're not stressing your shoulders. And then between the second and third, third and fourth, fourth and fifth. And again, the responses people have shared with me, the changes in their physiology from releasing your extremities are phenomenal. I've had people share that their hair stopped falling out from doing the 3 things: breathing, working between the toes, and working between the hands. And then all of that twisting that we're patterned into, we start to undo those patterns, and then it helps us bring that balance back into the body.
That is fascinating. All right, so I'm in love with feet, just so you know. I think that they are so underrated for healthy aging in general, but specifically because it's the shoe industry, it's fashion, has just destroyed our feet. Even my athletic shoes, it is so hard to get shoes that would allow for what a healthy foot should look like, right? Not this crammed together sort of thing. And then ladies have it even worse with all the high heels and the ridiculously pointed toes. And I think that we've become very, very disconnected from our feet and being able to be grounded and to have because like you said, that's the start of that whole kinetic chain where we make contact most commonly with the earth. But I'd never heard that idea of getting in between each toe and putting pressure there and starting to create that awareness and that space in that area. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
I actually did a podcast that went viral called "Death Starts in the Feet."
Death starts in the feet. Interesting. Yeah.
And then funny enough, it hasn't come out yet, but we just filmed, death/life starts in the feet. So one other thing that I gave people to do is, first of all, understanding how the migration of the tibia on the heel bones impact our whole alignment up the chain. Think of somebody with a prolapse.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have a prolapse, what's happening is the pelvis likely has anteriorly rotated and twisted. So this rotation, which is driven from your feet, it's creating this twisting of the hip joints in the pelvis. So now we've created less space in there and we've created a twist that anterior pelvis is now pulling my upper body, my rib cage forward and down. So I'm getting this tremendous amount of pressure in my abdominal cavity, which is going to push out the organs. And then we have a prolapse of some sort. And I mean, there's many versions of what that even is, but it's that migration of the tibia onto the feet. So when that video comes out, if people want to see it, it will be called Life Starts in the Feet. I give a really simple exercise that you can do to release that front of the ankle that gets so thick. So we basically lose the ability to dorsiflex properly, and we end up twisting when we walk in order to be mobile. We want to be able to dorsiflex and place the heel and push off from the big toe and the toes in general. So, but that creates the ability to have that movement, and that's just another key piece. If we're having all of those issues up the chain, spondylolisthesis, I mean, you name it, it's really coming from the patterning that gets locked into the feet. So we can undo everything, size and shape. Again, with all that pressure, think of the ballooning belly. When I was 50 pounds overweight and starving myself, it didn't change anything for the better. In fact, it compressed me more. It filled me with, I was constipated. I was toxic. I was ballooning bigger and bigger the harder I was working, because I didn't recognize force versus persuasion. When we force the body, it pushes back.
Yeah, sure does,
When we
doesn't it?
persuade
Yeah.
the body, yeah,
Yeah.
then we can actually get into the correct healing mode.
Yeah, it's really, you're going to lose when you fight against your body pretty much every single time. Isn't that right? We do discuss that quite a bit. Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm glad that you brought that up about the feet. I feel like most of us have dead feet and we don't even think about it. And like you said, just moving up the chain, so much can happen there. I was just looking here at my desk. I keep my correct toes. I don't know if you know what those are, the little toe spacer things
Yep, yeah.
that I'll wear as well. So yeah, I definitely love to nerd out on feet. I want to switch gears here a little bit, because you had started by talking about, hey, there's these two main proteins that make up this fascia. It's this, this fascia is throughout our entire body. Are there things that I can do from a nutrition perspective that would help support healthy fascia? For example, should I eat more protein? I'm thinking I should obviously stay well hydrated. Are there some keys outside of doing like this physical work and this breath work for fascia that I can bring into my practice?
I would, really optimally say, clean eating is the key. Like, we all have different body types, and some of us are going to strive better with more protein. This is so not my lane, because it's so vast
It
in
is.
all of the different things that we can do. Are you plant-based? Are you like, and there's so many perspectives out there, but whatever it is, we're toxic in this world. So we want to eat as clean as we can and as much from the earth as we can. But I mean, having said that, if you can go organic, and I even know that that's getting harder to even understand and recognize
Sure.
if it's good for you. But I mean, the less toxins we can pull into the body, the better, because once that liver gets clogged, that's going to impact your lymphatics. But
Right.
this work supports even fatty liver disease, because the combination of the diaphragmatic movement when working properly, combined with fascia decompression in and around the liver, will help to melt those fats that clog the liver. Butter at room temperature is a solid, heated it's a liquid. So when you've got this muscle working properly in your body, it's like you're turning on your body's engine, or I'll call it, the furnace. I live in an apartment block. So if I have only a space heater, I can only heat one room in my space. If you turn on the building's furnace, you heat the whole building. So your diaphragm is your body's furnace. The muscles of the upper chest are a space heater. They are so not how you want to be driving your body, because you might be feeding 10, 20% of your cells, and we're designed to survive. So the body will direct the energy for that. But to thrive, every single cell is equal. Whether it's a cell in your baby toe, a cell in
Yeah.
your armpit, a cell in your brain, they're equal when it comes to thriving. And the diaphragm was built so that we could thrive. We could move out what we're pulling in, and we can feed what we need. So again, from the perspective of nutrition, as clean as you can. And I mean, we're all limited on the nutrients because our food sources are so negative. So if you can find really good products to support that are clean, and I would say, dive in and make sure that they're good products.
Sure.
And then the detoxifying. There's so many other things you can do from a detoxifying perspective, like other lymphatic drainage. But this is amazing at lymphatic drainage as well, just because, again, we're opening up those areas that become stagnant and blocked.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you'd mentioned. By the way, I love the your caveat right out of the gates was eat clean. Just eat real food as much as possible, right? I think that most of us know our food supply is becoming more and more toxic. Hopefully that's changing here, but we'll see. But there's also all these toxins in our environment, aren't there? A lot of our beauty products and hygiene products and our cleaning products and just unfortunately, the water we drink and the air we breathe. And it can be
Yeah.
overwhelming, but do what you can to shore those things up and be your own healthcare advocate. I'm also, as a nutrition coach, I'm 100% with you. We're all bio individuals, and what works great for me might not be so great for you. And I have come to understand there isn't one true best diet. These are this is the macros everybody should eat. And I think what happens oftentimes is somebody has a dramatic health upgrade by changing the way they eat, and they interpret that everybody should eat this way. And especially those people that have large platforms go out and say, oh, everybody should be carnivore, everybody should be vegan, everybody should do this or this or this. Yeah, maybe not everybody. All right.
Well, and what this teaches you, this work, when you start diving into your body and you're connecting to the cells that are deeper than what you're consciously aware of, you start understanding the language of your body better.
Mm,
And ultimately, it's all about feeling good. And this is the part where we've given our power away to the so-called experts. Like, oh, well, they say this, but how do you feel? Do you feel good after you eat this meal or the next day? Do you feel bad after that? Like, start to pay attention to how you feel in your body. And this journey, because it does awaken you to those deeper aspects of yourself, it gives you the language of the cell. If we learn how to communicate with ourselves through thought, through action, through movement, all of the pieces, then we have more information about what works and what doesn't. And I mean, we all try things and it was a fail or a flop, but it's like, okay, so there's a consequence. Don't do it again.
yeah.
But, and also over time, we also change. Things that my body didn't like when I was younger, my body might thrive with now because we change over time. So we're a little bit of a human experiment. And, the more though that we can listen to what our body is saying and not look outward for the
Yeah.
answers, I think the better we become at really guiding what makes sense for us as individuals.
100%. Yes, I agree with you. I think part of the problem is we've become so disconnected from our physical bodies, most of us. Very early on, I told this just recently on this podcast. I told this story, but I had a podcast guest. He was, I don't know, he was in the 55 to 60-year-old division of CrossFit Masters, and he would like won 3 years in a row, the CrossFit Games. And he said something very interesting. He was talking about, I was just saying, hey, what does it take to be that elite of an athlete for so long at this age? That's just amazing. He said, well, Kevin, one of the things I do is I listen to my body when it whispers to me. And my first thought was, holy moly, most of us do not even hear our bodies when it's screaming at us. We're just that disconnected. And it really made me think, how do I relate to my body? Do I understand what it's trying to tell me? Because our bodies are signaling us all the time. And you said it earlier, our bodies are amazing. They'll adapt to darn near anything. We can downgrade our health and our bodies, and our bodies will adapt to that because it's keeping us alive. But there's a big difference between surviving and thriving, I think you said, right? And so in order to thrive, we've got to learn to connect to our physical bodies, to listen to our bodies, and to understand what our bodies are telling us and to respond appropriately. Do you think that's fair?
And appreciating these, right? I mean, we are
Sure.
so toxic.
Yeah.
I can't remember the difference, but I was on a podcast years ago and the person said, like, back in the 40s or 50s or whatever decade it was, there was a certain level of toxicity. And like now we're, how much worse? I mean, it's become ridiculous. When I hear these things, I'm like, the fact that we're still mobile
Mm,
is mind blowing to
yeah.
me. But that's how this incredible machine we've been given to live in,
Yeah.
how amazing it is. And it doesn't take much. It takes consistency.
Mm,
So, doing something for an hour and a half once a week or doing something for 15 minutes a day, do the 15 minutes a day. Like take it in bite-sized pieces and just make it digestible. Don't take out something that you love from your diet, add in something good
right.
and then see what falls away,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, like little things, because part of what we teach is nature abhors a gradient. Whenever there's a gap in the system, nature's going to fill it in, but what's it going to fill it in with? And
Right.
if I may jump, because I just totally veered on a different subject, but if I can talk about this in relation to acute injury, I think this will give people a really exciting perspective on what happens when you're injured. So let's say I sprain my ankle. There's a gradient. So I have a tear in a ligament, a tendon, whatever it is, or I have a break in a bone. That's a gradient. That's a gap. So nature's going to fill it in. So the way we have been trained to handle injury is the Rice method. And I know people are starting to change around
Yeah.
this, but rest, ice, compression, elevation.
Yep.
So the first 48 to 72 hours, we inflame in an area. So all that means is we're directing blood flow to the area of need because the body knows what it needs to rebuild itself. But we need to support that process. So when we stop that inflammation for that period of time when it is so essential to support it, what happens is that collagen in the surrounding tissue gets dumped into that space, creating your scar. So now imagine if I took a piece and I cut my shirt and I sewed it together. Now my shirt doesn't have that same alignment as it did before that. However, if we support the inflammation through adding energy, whether it be heat, conscious movement, proper diaphragmatic breathing, pressure, then we actually rebuild the tissue. So think of baking a cake. You've got your raw ingredients, you've got your sugar, flour, oil, whatever it is, you whip it up, you have batter. If you put batter in the freezer, you have frozen batter. If you put it in the oven, you bake cake. So the body needs energy to restore its health. So we can change the game in how we treat injury and decrease that healing time, and then also not have that shift in our alignment that is going to pattern us negatively throughout the rest of our lifetime as we move, simply by understanding these simple concepts.
Yeah, that's a big one. You're right. The rice, the rest, ice, compression, elevation has been the standard of care for forever, right? For anybody who's been a runner, you certainly have heard that. And it seems now that that's kind of being turned upside down quite a bit, right? It's the same thing like very often when we get a fever, the first thing we do is take something to reduce the fever. Well, you're having a fever for a very specific reason. It's doing a job and you're blunting the effectiveness of that job when you try to, take your Tylenol or whatever you take to reduce fevers with. And I guess the same sort of thing when I'm icing that injury, I'm sort of blunting that healing, my body's natural healing response. And that's not what I want. I want my body to do what it's divinely designed to do, which is its own
It's
repair.
fascinating too, because over the last 3 days, I was last week, I was working on a young man that had a third-degree axonal brain injury. So this was the fifth time I flew out to their home in British Columbia, and I stay with them while I'm working on them. But they have 4 cats, and I have some allergies to the cats. So then I came home Saturday, got a little bit of a thing in my throat. And then Sunday, Monday, and into today, the amount of dumping out of my nose has been unbelievable. And then to think, if I took something
To stop
to
that.
stop that,
Yeah.
like my body, like I already feel so much cleaner. I feel my skin looks better. Like all of these mechanisms pulling stuff out. Why would I want to keep that all that stuff inside my body that wanted to leave? And that's just it. Like our bodies know what to do, but we've been taught the pretty much opposite direction of what
We
that
have
is.
very often. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy. All right, Deanna. Well, this has been a very fun conversation. If folks are listening and they want to learn more about their fascia, and they certainly should, and about holistic health in general, how can people connect with you? Where do you want to send them?
So 2 places. My website is blocktherapy.com.
Yep.
And my private Facebook community, it's free for everybody to join. I have over 20,000 members. It's Block Therapy Community. I highly recommend, if you're interested, to jump in there, because I have such a beautiful, supportive community. I have 2 moderators that I've trained that do that handle it. But you get the community responding. And why this is such a beautiful place: if you have Parkinson's, MS, chronic pain, issues with size and shape, when you ask questions in there, you're going to get real people responding with their experiences.
Yeah.
So that's really what brings such a wealth of wisdom to this work, is the community. And I just love directing people there, because you're going to learn so much and you will feel so loved and supported when you can travel with people that have walked the path before you and they give those insights. It takes fear away of trying something new and starting something new. And I would be more than happy to provide a free gift if that's appropriate here.
Sure. Hit us. We love free gifts here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got a 9-part series where I teach people using a rolled up towel. Fascia decompression. So there's classes throughout the entire body. You can start immediately. Everybody has towels at home. We show you how to do it. And the responses I've had from people just doing this little sequence of things, phenomenal. And then if you feel that this work speaks to you, you can jump in and you can go to the next step.
Right on. All right. I love it. Guys, I will put all of Deanna's information, including that, the free gift, the website, and the Facebook community into the show notes here. You guys can find that on whatever app you're listening to this on, or of course, over at our website. Deanna, I want to thank you so much for taking the time, coming on and sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and certainly your passion for this. I really applaud the work you're doing and encourage you to keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you are over 50 and you feel frustrated or stuck and you want a clear plan, book a free clarity call with me. You can find a link to learn more in the show notes for this episode, and you guys can find that on whatever app you're listening to this on, or head over to silveredgefitness.com/406. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in 2 important ways. The first is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to please give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.